Okay, we get the old strings off of the Macala Dolphin Bridge ukulele here, and I'm going to go through a little bit of a setup. First thing we're going to do is protect the fretboard a bit. Some of this. Now this Renaissance wax, if you happen to use it, it's not like a lot of paste waxes that you want to let dry and then dry to a haze and then buff. If you do, good luck, you'll have to really work at getting it off. It says wipe on a small area and rub it in and wipe it off. Don't let it dry. And I can tell you from experience, if you let it dry, it's not fun. On the plus side, they don't seem to have used any dye on the fretboard. When they've dyed the fretboard, which a lot of ukulele manufacturers do, you can tell because this wax will bring up a little bit of black stuff. I mean, it won't bring up so much that it turns the fretboard light or anything like that, but it'll just be, if you can see that, that's getting just a little bit dark from dirt and stuff. But when they've used a lot of dye on something, it'll get really, really black. You can see it's pretty rough all around. If you look in here, there's paint kind of slopped over the edges of the fretboard there. Same thing up here, and it's kind of almost chipped along here. It's not, I mean, it's an inexpensive ukulele. You can't expect a whole lot, but it's with this bright paint, it's just real obvious, whereas on some other inexpensive ukes that are basically just wood, that sort of thing, you don't see paint slopped over the edges and stuff. But that's the price of having a pretty sparkle finish, I guess. The thing I like about this wax, well, first of all, it's a really good wax. It puts a good hard finish on there. But the thing I like about it, it doesn't make things, it makes things that are glossy real nice and glossy, but it doesn't really make satin finish thing. You can put it on a satin finish thing and it may make it look a little smoother, a little darker, what have you, but it doesn't really make it shiny. It doesn't put that thick of a coat on it. I've used this on bare wooden flutes and on flutes that have been treated with a hardening oil like walnut oil and then allowed to cure, and then just used a couple coats of the used the Renaissance wax on it, and it makes it really protects it without making it look real glossy and stuff. So, but it'll make metal and and glossy finishes real glossy, so it's just good stuff. It's probably why it's so expensive. I think this little tin, if I remember right, it was about $25 online, but you can see how much is left in there. There's quite a bit left, and I've had this for, I don't know, probably six years maybe. Using it on guitars and flutes and ukuleles and what have you. I've only recently started using it on fretboards. I used to use lemon oil on fretboards, and I kind of like that, but then I got a Ko-Aloha ukulele that had that light colored fretboard, and I was afraid the lemon oil would darken it, would penetrate and darken it and change the appearance of it. And so I just used some of this on it, and it worked really well. And so I've started using it on more of my ukuleles, and I really like the way it works out. It doesn't really penetrate like oil does, so if you've got a really dry fretboard, you might want to treat it with lemon oil first and get some oil into it. And then later go back and wax it if you're going to do it. But anyway, we now have a little bit of protection on there. So the next step is something that I rarely do this next step on ukuleles, and I don't really think it's necessary on this one. I've looked at this with a straight edge. I don't know whether I'll be able to get this to show up on the camera, but I have looked at this with a straight edge, and it looks, well, I don't know if that's really going to show up well enough to be useful. But it looks like the frets are pretty reasonable. But I'm going to go ahead and blueprint it, just to show you how that's done. And actually, now that I have this on here, there may be a little bit of rock in there. So there may be a fret near the middle that's a little high, or the whole neck may have bowed back a little bit. Of course, all the strings are off of it, so there would be some of that. Of course, an ukulele doesn't, like this, especially an expensive one, doesn't have an adjustable truss rod or anything, so you take the strings off and the neck may sag back just a little bit. If you were doing this on a guitar, when you took the strings off, then you would adjust the truss rod and get, I've actually got a ruler, a big plastic ruler that has gaps cut out to go over the frets, and so that you can actually get the fretboard level, with the truss rod, and then go in after you've got the fretboard level, then you can go in and level the frets. Obviously on something like this, it's not adjustable, you can't do that. So I'm just going to blueprint the frets real quick, and we'll see if that helps. But it will have to do. And on a guitar, when I'm doing a real thing on a guitar, I mean, I will take the time and I'll go through here and I'll put painter's tape, across the frets, all between all of the frets before I start working on it, and then that way I can do all the fret leveling and do all of it. But for something like this, it's not really worth getting the painter's tape out and going through all that trouble. What I'll do is I'll just use this little corner of this string package, and I'll just do that so that I don't accidentally mark over on the fretboard and put black Sharpie on the fretboard. And we're just going to blacken in the tops of these. And, we'll do that on each of these frets. Gee, there was room for one more fret there. We could have had 13 frets on this ukulele. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, like I say, I'm pretty sure that neck is bowed back a little bit. And whether it's because the strings are off of it or whether it's because that's the way it is, I don't know. But the cool thing is, if anything, you want a little bit of relief in the neck. In other words, you want the neck doing this a little bit. I mean, this is obviously a huge exaggeration, but you want a little bit of scoop across that neck, so that as you fret down here, you're not, if you've got a high point and you fret here and it goes the other way, then obviously you're going to get buzz. So if anything, we want a little bit of relief in there. Typically on a guitar, you put a few thousandths of relief in it. Ukulele, it's less critical and less controllable. And okay, my sanding block will actually fit on here, barely. I'll have to be careful. You can see I believe in going all out on my tools. There are some things I do go all out on. I went and bought some nice nut files and stuff like that because you really need them if you're going to do many of these. But all you need for a sanding block is something that's really rigid. And I discovered that these inexpensive. I mean, this is cut off of a 2 or a 4 foot. I think this was off of a 2 foot cut in half. Level at Home Depot was like $8 or $9, and I checked a whole bunch of them, and they were just all dead level this way. Now this way they're not. They aren't necessarily level this way, and you have to be careful because if you push on this hard enough, yeah, you can pull it out of level or out from being straight. But it beats paying $80-$90 for something similar from Stumac, for example, and seems to work just as good as near as I can tell. What I've got is I've got some 400 grit paper on one side and some 600 grit paper on the other. You want very fine paper. You don't, unless you just got terrible frets. Really, all you're wanting to do is just really touch it up. Unless you're actually trying to take them down and then recrown them, and I can't find my crowning file right now, so I'm not going to take it down that far. I just want to, and then you want to hold it. You don't want it to rock. If it rocks, obviously, you're not going to get a good blueprint. And see what you get. You can see this fret right here is pretty bright across the top. Almost all of the black is off across the top on that. So that's our high fret we were talking about when I talked about it rocking a little bit. This one looks like it might be a little bit high. If you notice, most of the black has gone off of it. And then there's others that are kind of dark, like this one's dark. The first fret's kind of dark. Second fret's very dark. Third fret's, it looks like I'm going to have to go ahead and take these frets down. I really didn't want to do that because I can't find my crowning file. And these appear to be brass frets. I'm going to go ahead and take them down a little bit and and recrown them as best I can. But without that crowning file or without the right tools, it's going to be a little bit tough there. It may be not quite as perfect as I'd like to have it, but hey, it's free. And it'll be better than that. You heard the G chord if you heard the other video, so you'll know that just about anything we do to it is going to be an improvement. I really don't want to end up flattening the top of any of these frets because, like I say, I don't have my crowning tool to restore them back to round. So what I will end up doing, I've done it before, and it's doable, but it's not much fun, is actually kind of doing it by hand with some paper to kind of restore the roundedness to the top of the fret, if any of them end up too flat. So hopefully we won't have to go there, and then hopefully when we put some decent strings on this, there will be enough tension to pull the neck back up a little bit, and that would be a good thing, because then it would be a little concave instead of a little convex, and we would be less likely to get buzz. Now you can see, if you look here really close, let me go ahead and unlock the focus again. If we can get the camera to focus on this, you can see that some of these are getting pretty bright now, and yet others are still, pretty dark. That indicates that, yeah, this really needed a touch up on the frets. I won't say it's the worst I've seen. I've seen guitars that were way worse, and I'm talking moderately expensive guitars. Now this fret down here, I'm not really going to worry too awfully much about getting this one, because it's the last fret. If it's a little bit low, that's fine. I can live with it, In fact, typically when you do this on a guitar, you've got a situation where you come up and you hit about where the body is, and then you've still got a number of frets across here going down to your bridge, and of course you got a much longer scale. And so what you want to do on a guitar typically is you reach that point, and then you actually want to take the frets down so they're lower down this way. And what you do is you put some tape up here to protect these, and then you work work them that way. So you put some tape across here, and that actually makes the sanding block go at an angle, up like this. This is a huge exaggeration, so that these frets actually taper lower, the last few frets, so that as you're fretting in this area, you don't end up with any buzz, because the next frets are lower. So I'm not going to try to get that one down. If I was to try to get it down level with that, then I'd have to take these others way down, and I don't want to do that. It looks like let me put my magnifiers on here. Yeah, it looks like we're clean all the way across that. Pretty much clean across the first fret, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth. The 10th might be a little bit low. The 11th is okay, and then like I said, the 12th is low, and I'm fine with that. I think I'm going to leave that 10th alone. I don't want to take these down any further than I absolutely have to, just because that will mean that much more work crowning them and so on. Okay, I'm going to stop this video, and then I will get the stuff out that I need to kind of crown this by hand, which is not the way I recommend doing it. Fortunately, these are soft frets, and there's not a lot to be done. They're not real flat, so it'll be okay. But it's not really the way I recommend I do it, but or way that I recommend it be done. But I'll show you how I do it. So next video we'll cover the crowning the frets the poor man's way, when you've got no fret crowning file, or when you have a very expensive fret crowning file that you cannot find.